Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the iPhone 14 Pro Max and compare it against the iPhone 14 Plus and see which particular phone is a better one for you. Now, these two phones are very interesting because they both came out at a couple of different times. The iPhone 14 Plus and the 14 Pro Max came out the exact same time, but I guess the way these phones were significantly different. The 14 Plus was the first Plus iPhone we saw back again for several years after this, what was the last one, the 8 Plus? So for so many generations, there was not a Plus iPhone that Apple made. The 14 Pro Max was there for, the Pro Max series was there since 2019. So I would tell you, without a doubt, in my personal opinion, phones like this are very, very interesting to compare, but you can't really go wrong with either one. Both these phones are very good, and both these phones are still completely worth buying. If you have all the money in the world, please go for the 14 Pro Max. If you're on more of a budget, go for the 14 Plus, but let's go and see how they both compare. If you want to pick either one of these phones, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there, and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of both these devices, the iPhone 14 Plus on the front of this particular phone has a 6.7-inch Super Retina XDR OLED display. And it's a pretty good looking panel. You have the notch up top. It's a fairly big phone, so if you've never used any of these phones before, keep in mind these are very, very big devices, and that's just kind of what's going on when you're getting these types of phones. They're just really big, and I don't really have an issue with that, but if you don't like carrying a big, massive phone, this is definitely one of those, issues you're going to run into. The display itself is pretty good though. 60Hz panel, gets fairly bright, and I definitely do think on the outside with its panel, it still looks fairly good for the most part. There's not really a lot to complain about here. With the iPhone 14 Pro Max, on the other hand, you are getting the same 6.7-inch size display, so it's an LTPO Super Retina XDR OLED display. But with this particular phone, there's a few things. One, it is a brighter panel overall as far as we can tell, 2000 nits of brightness versus 1200 nits of brightness on the 14 Plus, but also you're getting the dynamic island on the iPhone 14 Pro Max as well, which is another really cool feature. But on top of all of those things, you are also getting that 120 Hz display on the 14 Pro Max as well. This in and of itself, once again, is another really big feature for this particular phone. If I'm going through and if I'm buying a device, I want it to have a 120 Hz display. This in and of itself, by far, is one of the biggest, assets for this particular phone. And once again, if I'm going to pick up a device, I definitely want it to have some sort of capability like that. If it doesn't have a 90 Hz or above, that's probably going to be a problem for me. And this in and of itself is going to be probably the biggest issue, I would say, for the most part. So I would tell you with the panels itself, definitely look great. The rest of the build qualities, they both have lightning ports and stuff like that. So there's not really insane differences between these two, I would say, from that perspective. They're still fairly good for the most part, from that side of things. The flat sides, are very modern. I do like the reflective material on the 14 Pro Max, as you probably can see. On the back side, there's also some pretty big differences. So they both have glass backs, but the iPhone 14 Plus's back is a solid glass back there. The iPhone 14 Pro Max is a frosted glass back. So this is also another pretty big difference here too. If you're wanting the frosted glass back, you definitely want to go for something like the iPhone 14 Pro Max, which is going to be giving you a little bit of a better experience there. With the iPhone 14 Plus, this one is just essentially as kind of what you'd expect. It's the same old here. It's just the standard glass back. But the 14 Pro Max is definitely going to be giving you a better experience, I would say, from the build quality standpoint. You have MagSafe capability on both these phones as well, wireless charging, IP certification, lots and lots of overlap here for the most part. So there really isn't anything super insane going on with both these that you haven't seen before. But I'd probably tell you with both these phones, very, very good experience. And once again, I don't really have an insane amount of things to complain about here with these particular devices. So that kind of covers it up on the outside of both these phones. Now, in terms of the camera side of things, this is also another very interesting take between both, or very interesting thing. So you're getting a dual camera setup on the iPhone 14 Plus, a wide and an ultra-wide lens. With the iPhone 14 Pro Max, you're getting a higher megapixel wide-angle lens, but you're also getting the ultra-wide and a telephoto lens on the 14 Pro Max as well. So this in and of itself is another very big asset going on for this particular device as well, because on both of them, you're getting a little bit of a different experience. With the iPhone 14 Pro Max, that is a significantly better camera in every single way. There can be some cases made where the 14 Plus is a better value per dollar camera, but even then, you are getting a way better camera on the iPhone 14 Pro Max in every single way you can probably think about it. So if I'm going through and if I'm buying some sort of phone, I definitely want it to have as great of a camera as possible, and with the 14 Pro Max, that's definitely going to be the one I'd recommend, again, the average person to go ahead and buy. That is going to be a significantly better camera, I would argue, than something like the iPhone 14 Plus. So keep that in mind. And social media applications and those things like that, you're going to be getting an excellent camera from that particular device too. So very solid camera on both those from that side and, from the social media apps. But I will tell you, like I said, if you're wanting the better camera overall, definitely the iPhone 14 Pro Max is going to be the better way. But there's still lots of overlap. 4K at 60 on the back of both of them, which is very nice to have too. So this in and of itself is a very, very good camera that I like on both. So that kind of covers it up there. Now, in terms of software and longevity, I will tell you with both these phones, very good. They're still supported with software, and there really isn't that much to complain about here from the software experience standpoint, which is something I do like a lot. So from that side of things, I really don't have that much to complain about here from the software, but the 14 Pro Max is probably going to be the one that's going to be lasting a longer period of time than the iPhone 14 Plus. So if you are going to want a phone that's going to last a longer period of time, there is a pretty high likelihood where the iPhone 14 Pro Max is going to be lasting longer than the 14 Plus. And the reason for that is because that particular phone does actually have that, it does have a newer chipset than the iPhone 14 Plus. So the 14 Plus is an older chipset a little bit than the 14 Pro Max. So if you are wanting the device that it has the newer chipset, you really don't have any other choice. You're probably going to have to go for something like the iPhone 14 Pro Max when it comes down to it. So from that side of things, that also kind of covers it up there. Now, in terms of the other side of things, when it comes down to the performance side, this is another interesting thing. So the iPhone 14 Plus inside has that Apple A15 Bionic chip inside of it with 6GB of RAM, where the iPhone 14 Pro Max has that Apple A16 Bionic chip inside of it with 6GB of RAM as well. So here's the thing. If you're wanting the phone that has the longer lasting support and the more powerful phone, the 14 Pro Max is definitely going to be the one that's going to be there. That phone is going to be giving you a better experience. It's going to be giving you faster quality everything. And that's just kind of what ends up happening when you're getting these types of newer phones. You are going to be getting the device that essentially will be giving you the faster performing phone. But I will still tell you, with the iPhone 14 Plus, this is still a very, very good performing device. You have very little things to complain about here from that particular phone. I feel like that phone is still very good for the most part. And I will tell you, for the average person out there, you're going to be getting a very, very good performing phone. There's, once again, not that much to complain about here for that particular device. The 14 Pro Max is going to be feeling a little bit faster though, because you are going to be getting that 120Hz display. So things are just naturally going to feel faster and smoother, that kind of stuff. But once again, I don't even think it's like that big of a deal. And you're going to be getting a very fast phone from both these when it comes down to it from there too. So to kind of sum up this entire video and to kind of be honest, I will tell you, you can't really go wrong with either one of these phones, but I will tell you the iPhone 14 Pro Max is by far the better phone in every single way. And if you have the option to, if you have the opportunity to, I would recommend just going up and spending more money on that particular phone. And that one is definitely going to be making a lot more sense to me to recommend to people, rather than something like the iPhone 14 Plus. I think the Plus is still a very good phone, don't get me wrong, but I think it makes a lot more sense to go and buy something like the iPhone 14 Pro Max rather than the iPhone 14 Plus when it comes down to it. So from that side of things, that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that will mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.